Gable Steveson launched himself onto the college wrestling scene, undefeated and ranked number 1 in the country in his freshman year by the end of the Big Tens, as you might expect. He's so good that many have speculated he is the greatest of all time, though only scratching the surface of a GOAT status wrestling career. Having said all that, there was one person who was able to best him, snatching his chance of an undefeated 4-time NCAA champion college career that would have rivaled the likes of Cael Sanderson's. Can you guess who that man was? It was none other than Anthony Cassar from Penn State, who earned himself a breakout heavyweight season for the Nittany Lions, though his career was marred by injury and losing his spot to Shakur Rashid 1 year prior. He had one solid season in college, and unfortunately for Gable Steveson, it ran right through the possible GOAT himself. They met twice, once in the Big Ten Finals and once at NCAA semis. So how did Cassar beat Gable those 2 times? Well, let's find out. Match number 1, Big Ten Finals. The first period was mostly spent just feeling each other out. No super committed shots, no scrambles or anything like that. Those shots were taken. Neither of them were willing to overcommit, which isn't a terrible idea as they are number 1 and number 2 in the country at this point, and this was their first meeting. Second period, Steveson takes bottom, gets up to his feet. Cassar does have locked hands here, so Steveson is posting hands down and staying in good position, but Cassar doesn't try too hard to get him back down to the mat. He lets him go for the escape point. I would like to have seen him try to ride Steveson out more. Too often do people not even attempt to ride each other out in college. A riding time point can be beneficial and strategic, as you'll see later, and isn't crazy hard to attain if you just consistently try. Score is 1-0 Steveson. And not much happens for another period. Some fakes from either side, even less action than the first period. Third period starts. Cassar chooses bottom, stands up to his feet. Gable makes no attempt to hold him down, lets him go pretty easily. Score is now tied 1-1. Minute 30 left in the match. The first real committed shot takes place. Gable has a lefty collar. Cassar's left foot is super far forward, and so Gable goes for a righty low leg single. Catches a piece of it, immediately pulls himself in, gets his head up, and starts coming up to a double. Gable ends up circling around him, locks his hands up, lifts Cassar back to the mat for the easy takedown. You could say Cassar didn't attempt to sprawl or anything to defend, but the control Gable has on the ankle is keeping Cassar's left knee turned in. You can actually do the same thing after a high crotch as you run double. Drop down to an ankle, lift it, and pull it towards you. It tweaks the knee in a little and forces your opponent to turn away from you, making the finish easier, making it a lot more difficult to initiate a scramble. Score is 3-1 Gable. Cassar gets up to his feet. Gable, still not trying to hold him down at all, lets him free for the easy escape. Score is 3-2 Gable. 30 seconds to go. Gable has a righty collar tie. Cassar goes over tie. He's been doing this all match, using the over ties to hand fight. He tries to do a little bit of a slide by, turns his head away a little, and reaches for the left wrist with his right hand, but Gable posts on the head with both arms and pushes it away. They go right back to the same position, Gable reaching for the righty collar, but this time Cassar quickly grabs the over tie, pulls the head a little, and goes for a head inside double, which ends up turning into a lefty single. Cassar immediately lifts the leg up and runs the pike, using the left leg to suspend Gable's right leg into the air as he applies pressure downward with his head. This puts Gable right to his butt and allows Cassar to wrap up both ankles, giving him the takedown. Running the pike like this is super dangerous. It's not recommended. Very easy to slip off of the control you have on the leg, or for your head to slip off of the hip and slide to the outside, which kills your leverage and makes you stumble in that direction. Regardless, Cassar keeps control of both of these things and gets the takedown. He then rides Gable out for the rest of the match for the 4-3 victory in Big Ten Finals. Match number 2, semifinals at NCAA's. First period, about 15 seconds in, Steveson goes 2 underhooks and forces Cassar out of bounds for an early stall call. This is a little premature in my opinion. It's not that hard to push someone out of bounds if you have 2 underhooks and they don't feel like being thrown. Now, if you push them out of bounds with it another time or two, then it makes sense. Steveson does continue to push him around for another 2 minutes. Cassar is constantly losing ground and only doesn't go out when he circles in, but then he's pushed backwards again. Minute left into the first, they both have a righty collar tie. Gable snaps the whole situation down to the mat and then does a light lefty pass by, pushes Cassar's left elbow to the left a tad, and then drops to a single. Lifts it up between his legs, runs the pike a tiny bit, which throws Cassar down to the mat. Cassar is able to bounce his right leg out to escape the takedown, but gives up another stall call. This one is very warranted. Gable did have a chance to attack that second leg and hold tight. He was probably focusing on keeping his ankles in, and so he didn't run out of bounds, but he didn't move much at all after the drop. Score is 1-0 Gable. Gable takes down in the second, gets up to his feet, posts the wrist down for an easy escape. Again, doesn't look like Cassar was trying to ride him out at all. Score is 2-0 Gable. Second period runs out without much action. Cassar takes bottom in the third, gets an easy escape. Gable is still not trying to ride him out. Scores 2-1 Gable. I'm sure Gable could get some riding time, but he's just not interested. Gable stays on the attack, which is a good idea, but unfortunately, sometimes it backfires on you. Gable has a lefty collar tie. Cassar digs on the outside of it, which is a great time to shoot. Those inside-outside control battles can lead to shots as your opponent digs to the inside because the arm is busy with something as you disappear. Gable lifts the right elbow a bit and fires off a lefty high crotch, tries to pull it in for a single, but Cassar matches the angle really well. Gable gets stuck a little on the knee, didn't penetrate enough, and so isn't able to create a good enough angle and falls to the right a little. He has to let go of the leg with his right hand to post on the mat quick to stabilize and not fall completely over over, but that gives Cassar the ability to sprawl and circle away, get distance, freeing his leg, and circle around for the takedown. This is a really good reaction from Cassar and an unfortunate series of events from Steveson. Scores 4-1 Cassar. Cassar then proceeds to ride Steveson out, builds up over a minute of riding time. Cassar did do a lot of hanging on the ankle and not much else, so I'm surprised he didn't get called for stalling throughout this. Also, there's an over-under situation here that's very controversial. Steveson gets up to his feet and attacks an overhook, pushes the hips away, and really should have been given an escape here at about the 51-second mark after he faked it an inside trip. This would make the riding time stay at 59 seconds and not give an extra point at the end of the match. Steveson's side challenged, but it was overruled, so the riding time stays. Steveson then proceeded to push Cassar around, took a few shots. Cassar did nothing but back away for the final 30 seconds with no stall calls, and so he won 4-3, getting the extra point because of riding time. This is pretty silly. The refs really should have called stalling one more time, make the score tied, and then let overtime decide who wins. It's not cool that someone can sit on an ankle, stall, build up a minute of riding time, and then run away for another 40 seconds with no stalling being called, and then be rewarded for it. This hurts the sport of wrestling and why freestyle is superior in this regard. In freestyle, you're not able to stall this much for this long. You'll either get put on passivity and give up a point, or you'll get run out of bounds and give up a point. Maybe get cautioned for another point if you don't try hard enough to stay in. For folk style to get more relevance, to have more action, it needs to incentivize wrestling to the end of the match, not stalling. With the way stalling is being called, I saw it this year at NCAA's as well, you're incentivized to run away to sneak out the win, which is boring from a fan's perspective and frustrating from a coach's perspective. 3-point takedowns are only going to make this worse because you can stall even more with the penalty being worth less. You can then get a takedown and stall 3 times and still be winning. 3-point takedowns should never be put into place, and I want the push-out point along with the same passivity calls freestyle has. You can keep all the other rules the same. Folk style is still folk style, but it would greatly incentivize action and make wrestlers do what they're there to do, which is wrestle. Okay, rant over. Cassar beats Steveson for the second time, handing him the only 2 losses he'll see for a very long time. A lot of it based on his ability to ride Steveson out and take chances against him. Cassar finished out an amazing season as an NCAA champion, which is awesome for Cassar, rough for Steveson, who likely would have been Cael Sanderson status otherwise.